Hey guys, FilthyRobot here, bringing you another guides, tips, and tricks video. This time we're going to be talking about the medieval era civics cards and the medieval era government choice available to you. So let's dive right in and get started on that. So the first of these is going to be, not religion, we want government. First of these is going to be monarchy. Let's talk a little bit about monarchy. The first thing of note is the influence increase compared to the other governments. For the first three governments are all exactly the same. They gain 3 influence points per turn. And at 100 points they gain an envoy. Monarchy now gains 5 influence points per turn, and at 150 points gain 2 envoys. And additionally, their base bonus is 20% extra envoy points gained. So instead of 5, they're really getting 6 points per turn. And that's the comparison point. And if you look at it that way, if you get 6 points per turn and 2 envoys at 150 points compared to 3 points per turn and 1 envoy at 100 points, you're basically getting them nearly 3 times as fast, right? That's basically, the math's not quite exact for that, but it's about 3, it's a little bit less than 3 times as fast as this. Now, it's not quite the comparison point to be used because most times, most governments are going to be running the extra 2 influence points per turn, which means that when that math works out, you're actually getting here, you're going to be getting 8 per turn. Maybe a little bit more if the bonus influence points it plays to that, compared to 3 per turn, compared to 5 per turn over here. And the way that math works out, it's about twice as quick. So in other words, if both times are being, if both empires are running the policy that gives them +2 influence points per turn, you're seeing monarchy generate envoys about twice as quickly as any of the initial government choices available. And that's a pretty big deal to get extra influence points. The envoy system and the city-state system is quite strong in current game right now. There's a lot of bonuses that are extremely useful to your long-term empire, and that's a really big upgrade there. Let's take a look what else it does. +2 housing in every city with medieval walls. That's fairly shit. You don't tend to build a lot of medieval walls. You don't tend to build a lot of ancient walls. And then in addition, you don't really want to spend the hammers to upgrade these to medieval walls. So overall, I don't really think very highly of this particular bonus. But the 20% influence bonus is decent. It's not terrible. It's not great, but it's decent. So this is available first. So this is available if we, hold on a minute, let's accept monarchy. And then we'll go show you where it is in the tech tree. So if we back out of this and come here, these are your first 3 governments available here in the classical era, right at political philosophy. Monarchy is available here at divine right, which is just pretty late in the medieval era. And the rest of the governments aren't available until the Renaissance, the Exploration Reformed Church, for Theocracy and Merchant Republic, rather. Okay, let's take a look at the cards that are available. So Monarchy gives you 3 military slots, 1 economic slot, 1 diplomatic slot, and 1 wildcard slot. You can think of this in general if you're using Oligarchy, which was 1 of each, or if you're using Classical Republic, which is 2 of these, 1 of these, and 1 of these. You are getting a boost in the total number of cards, although if you were using Oligarchy, you may not be particularly thrilled about the fact you lost an economic slot when you upgraded government. Now, the envoy thing makes that pretty worthwhile still, but you are going to be paying the cost of an economic policy. Let's take a look at what we've gained for new policies in the medieval era. The first of these is Merchant Confederation. Gain +1 gold in each of your from each of your envoys in city-states. This is fairly weak, especially in the early game. 6 or 7 gold is really not worth it if you're talking about the entire use of a diplomatic policy slot. It's just not very good. And compared to the one that gives you 2 extra influence points per turn towards earning city-state envoys, this one just seems to me to be better in all scenarios compared to Merchant Confederation. And maybe in the very, very late game, I might switch over just because I don't need any more influence points because the game is going to end before it's relevant. But for the vast majority of the game, I just have no reason to run Merchant Confederation because Charismatic Leader is better, and the times when I need to use a situational thing, Diplomatic Leader is still better than Merchant Confederation because it's essentially giving me a free envoy when I do need to use that temporarily. Let's take a look at the other policy slots that have been added, the other policy cards. These are the military ones. First of these is 100% production towards medieval, Renaissance, and industrial era heavy and light cavalry units. This replaces the old bonus towards ancient and classical era light and heavy cavalry units. This can be annoying to get this policy, honestly, because sometimes you're not quite ready to build these. You're not quite done with, for example, building horsemen or spamming horsemen, and you want to keep using those. But if you are planning to switch to knight production, this is an extremely powerful policy for building knights. Knights are probably, if not they're certainly one of the best units in the game right now in terms of their timing, their power, and their upgrade paths, and their ability to be upgraded into a knight from an existing unit. I think this this bonus here is very strong as a whole because you're going to want to build a lot of knights if you're going to war. Professional Army, 50% discount on all unit upgrades. This is another extremely powerful bonus. It's a little bit slow to get. That bonus doesn't come into play till here, I believe, which is pretty late in the medieval era. But it is an amazing bonus when you do get it. 50% discount on unit upgrades. You use this in the same way that you use land surveyors or you use diplomatic league. You want to sub this in for basically one turn and then take it out again if you can do that, and you upgrade all of your units in one quick burst and get a huge discount on that. Very strong. It's expensive to upgrade archers into crossbows, and it's expensive to upgrade heavy cav into, or heavy chariots into knights, and getting a discount on that is very, very beneficial. I love this ability. It's very strong. Okay, sack. Yields gained from pillaging are doubled for pillaging districts. This is a new card. We had raid before, which was just improved tiles. This is yields doubled for pillaging districts. My personal take on this is even worse than raid, if that's possible, because I don't ever want to pillage districts on cities that I'm conquering. So I guess this is the only time this is useful is when I'm fighting a war, and it's a war that I'm apparently not particularly winning because I'm not able to take the cities quickly, or I guess I'm flanking, I'm getting units who pass my opponent's front line, and he's somehow totally inept at defending anything, and he doesn't build reinforcements, so there's no units to block my units as I get past, and I have access to all of his cities' districts, and then I have a very fast unit that's able to get there, pillage those, and stay alive. I mean, the amount of stuff that has to happen for this to be useful is astronomical, and I just generally don't want it. So I suppose there will be scenarios where you're like, oh, I'm at his capital, I'm taking his fourth expand, but I have a horseman unit near his capital. I could just go pillage his commercial hub and get a ton of money. Okay, that might be useful, but it still feels like it's probably not worth the cards. The amount of times it's going to be useful is so small. I think very little of it. Retainers, +1 amenity for cities with the garrisoned unit. I think this is one of the better military policy cards because it's a military policy card that is still useful when you're not directly at war. It's similar to conscription in terms of how much I like it. I use it a lot. Basically what it lets you do is have units, military units, a standing army, preferably a standing army that you're not paying for because it's classical era units or ancient era units that you have conscription for. So if you have a bunch of heavy chariots, for example, that you built early, you don't have to pay for anymore because they're just sitting in your buildings. Or if you're Samaria with war carts, same type of thing. And you're saving them. At some point, you're going to want to upgrade them to knights to have military on demand or to defend yourself, either attack or defend, whatever. But you have them sitting around. Now they're doing something awesome. They're giving you +1 amenity in that city for just having them stationed in the city. I really like this bonus. I think it's very, very strong. Feudal contract, +50% production towards medieval era. Medieval and Renaissance ranged in melee units. This has just replaced the ancient and classical one. It's the same quality of bonuses. It's strange to me because horse units are so good in this game already, right? They're so fast. They have all the same bonuses that a melee unit gets. In other words, they can fortify, they get terrain bonuses, they're twice as fast. Why do they also get 100% production compared to just the 50% production that the ranged and melee units get to me? That makes no sense to me. They're already better units. Why are they also getting an increased in production compared to the other one? And such a big difference too. This is 100 compared to 50. That's huge. That's twice as much of a bonus we're getting out of this card. So this card is useful if you need to build crossbows, and it's useful if you need to build like pikemen or I guess medieval and Renaissance would be muskets then. I guess it's useful in those scenarios, but I just find I don't use it anywhere near as much as I use chivalry. It's just I don't tend to spam these units as much. So maybe once I'm ready to build muskets, but even then I tend to promote my existing swordsmen into muskets rather than hard build muskets from scratch. So I don't love this card, but it is just a replacement card, and it is a production card, and the production cards are quite strong. Even the 50% production card is quite strong, although it's nowhere near as strong as 100% production card. All right, the rest of these were existing already, so we'll move on. Let's take a look at the economic stuff that is available to us. First of these is Gothic Architecture. +15% production towards medieval and Renaissance era wonders. This replaces the card that gives you classical and ancient era wonders, except it's better. In the way that the percent production increases are always going to be better with cities that are larger. You get more absolute hammers out of that because the city is just big. It has more hammers for this to modify. This is going to be better at this stage in the game than the ancient and classical one was because the cities are going to be more developed. I like this one a little bit more. There are some good medieval and Renaissance era wonders. So if you are building them, this can be a pretty significant boost to production for that. Although sometimes I still don't want to give up my other cards for just building one wonder. You'll have to look at the hammers in your empire to get a sense of whether or not it's worth swapping this in or not. Town charters, 100% commercial hub district adjacency bonuses. This one starts to get a little bit better, especially in the early game. We talked a little bit about the campus adjacency one and the holy site adjacency one. In the early game, you don't tend to build a lot of campuses, and very rarely do you build a lot of holy sites. And these bonuses don't tend to be a lot. They don't seem to. You don't tend to get a lot of adjacency bonuses for holy sites or campuses. There aren't a lot of mountains, aren't a lot of the one bonus for 2 adjacent forests or 2 adjacent rainforest doesn't seem to occur all that much, although sometimes you do get the rainforest stuff for the natural philosophy one. However, the commercial hub district adjacency bonuses are a little bit easier to fulfill. Basically, it just needs to be on a river. And that means that that bonus is a little bit more consistent. Now, the resource it gives you, while being better or equal to faith, roughly gold, it's not as good as science, so there's something to be said there. This one, again, doesn't strike me as amazing. I do sometimes use it when I have nothing better to run, but I don't love it. The district adjacency bonuses as a whole aren't all that strong, although the industrial one may be the exception to that, and they will get replaced, or rather you'll get an option later on that is double the yield from the buildings in those districts, and those ones tend to be a lot stronger than the actual district adjacency bonus ones. There will be exceptions. Sometimes you'll have really cool situations where you get a district and it's got like +8 yield from adjacency bonuses, in which case doubling that would be pretty nice, but just the bulk of the time that's not going to be what happens. All right, let's talk about the rest of them. Craftsman, 100% industrial zone adjacency bonuses. This is one I was just referencing. This one is very strong, or rather, it isn't very strong, but it's because production is so much better than the other resources available to you. That production is better than food, is better than science, is better than gold, etc. This one is a better bonus comparatively because it's the same magnitude of bonus. It's 100% adjacency bonus in both the commercial hub, the science one, the holy site one, and the industrial zone one. But the resource it's giving you double of is just better than the resource of the other ones. It's also fairly easy to create situations where your industrial zone is giving you a lot of production because all it has to do is be placed adjacent to mines. So it's quite easy to drop an industrial zone in the center of 3 or 4 hills and build 3 mines around it. So now it's getting 3 production from that and maybe an adjacency bonus from a district. So suddenly now you're getting 4 production from the industrial zone. You can double that to 8. That's a That's not a inconsequential bonus. That's actually starting to be an impactful bonus in a way that 8 gold probably isn't comparatively. All right, Medina Quarter. This replaces the one we were talking about last episode, the one that gives you +1 housing in all cities with 2 districts. This is now +2 housing in all cities with 3 districts. I'm not always thrilled about this one. It comes at an awkward time. It comes fairly early, if I remember correctly. Let's find it. Yeah, actually it's not as early as I remembered it. What I find is a lot of times I don't have 3 districts available when the Medina Quarter shows up, but I do have 1 district available, and since it replaces the card, it will remove the card you had, the one that gives you +1 housing with 2 districts, and now you can replace it with what's hypothetically a better card, but sometimes the prerequisites needed to get the housing are not actually applicable to the cities I want the housing in. So I have a mixed mind about this. This seems to be better in the next era or the next era after that, when you actually have most of your cities with 3 specialty districts, in which case this is quite useful. But it seems a little bit harder to trigger in the timing that I actually get this policy. Just to be aware, specialty districts do not include things like aqueducts or what's the other non-specialty district that's slipping my mind right now? Or neighborhoods. So this is specifically, it needs to be an encampment, a holy site, a campus, an industrial hub, a harbor, a commerce hub, or whatever the last one is. I think there's one more I'm forgetting right now. But it has to be one of those that's right, a cultural district, right? It has to be one of those districts, not the aqueduct, the city center, or the neighborhood, which means you really do have to have 3 districts, which means you need your city to be at least population 7, and you have to have built all 3 of those, and it starts to be a little bit arduous to meet those demands in this stage in the game, in the medieval era of the game. All right, moving on. 100% theater square district adjacency bonuses I think is total shit, mostly because I think the theater square is the worst of the districts as a whole, so you're not going to build very many of them in your empire, and you're not going to build them very early. I think the culture is decent, So it's not that I don't like culture. I think culture is quite a good resource. So getting double culture from something that gives you extra culture would be nice. But I don't think you're going to build many of these. So I don't think this is going to be very helpful. Clearly, there will be some exceptions, especially when you're doing tourism. And I think this will get a little bit better in the later eras when you're actually going to have the time to build those theater districts and are actually going to be focusing on that. I just don't think it's very good at this stage in the game. Trade Confederation, +1 culture and +1 science from international trade routes. I struggle in this game still to want to send international trade routes. There are some benefits from doing so, but the cost of sending an international trade route is I cannot send a domestic trade route, and domestic trade routes give me food and production. And in particular, the production is something I really, really care about. It's a way to boost small cities quickly, or it's a way to build wonders quickly by putting all the trade routes in one city and then sending those trade routes to the rest of your empire so that those trade routes are bringing that one city in like 20 or 30 hammers or something. And that would be really, really strong for centralizing production for building wonders. So when I read this, I like 1 culture and 1 science are decent yields to add to a trade route. That's not bad at all in terms of yields, but I sometimes struggle to want to send international trade routes at all. So if you are in a game where you have somehow managed to convince yourself that you're willing to send international trade routes, this is a decent policy. The problem is most games, at least for me so far, I haven't found myself in those situations. I will send out some international trade routes generally to get trading posts in cities so I can meet other city-states, so I can meet the quests for other city-states that are further away, or sometimes just to get roads to specific locations. But that tends to be the reason why I send out trade routes internationally, not because I actually value the yields I get from those international trade routes. All right, meritocracy. This one is really powerful. Each city receives +1 culture for each specialty district it constructs. If you think about it, compare that immediately to aesthetics, right? Those are the two they're available at the same era. These are very comparable in terms of what they do. They're both boosting your culture. This one tends to be, I will almost certainly, when I have the ability to build 3 districts, I'll almost certainly have a commerce hub, an industrial hub, and a campus. Those are the 3 districts that are the highest priority, with some exceptions for encampments on border cities or maybe one holy site somewhere to get a religion or something. But in general, that's the type of stuff I'm going to be boosting, which means this is basically 3 culture per city every single time at this stage in the game that will continue to go up as I build more districts and my cities grow, as opposed to this one, which tends to be probably only going to get 1 or maybe at the very most 2 of a boost for a theater square district, and you're probably not building theater squares. This one strikes me as quite good. This one strikes me as quite bad, and particularly in the timing of the availability here. The other economic policy card we need to talk about is serfdom. This is newly trained builders gain 2 extra build actions. This is both a boost and a nerf to the builder's policy, because this replaces your 30% production towards builder policy that has been there for all previous portions of the game. Certainly builders with 2 extra build actions is awesome, and if you think about in terms of percentage, that is a better percentage increase than the 30% build production increase, but it is annoying that it is a replacement as opposed to a addition. What I would really like to do is I'd like to run the card that lets me build builders for 30% production extra, or 30% extra production added towards builders, and then then build all my builders up to 1 turn, and then I'd like to switch cards to get them 2 extra build actions, finish all those builders, and then go back to another card is what I'd really like to do. This is okay. Certainly builders with 5 charges are much better than builders with 3 charges. So this is a useful policy card. I still use it quite a lot, but I'm sometimes annoyed that it replaces rather than adds to my existing options for my government. All right, naval infrastructure plus 100% harbor district adjacency bonuses. The harbor district is very similar to the commercial district in terms of what it's actually doing for your empire. So this is very similar to the the town charters boost. It might be, again, you're not going to settle naval empires as much as you settle coastal empire, as much as you settle inland empires on Pangea maps in particular. This may be particularly useful for England compared to other civs, but in general, I don't think you're going to be using this very much at all. So I expect this to see very little play, and I don't think it's very strong whatsoever. All right, let's talk about our new additions to the wildcard policy slots here. These are generally great people policy slots, great people points. We now have great admiral production. Great admirals are great, no pun intended, for military action, naval military action. but naval military action is going to be few and far between, and their SimCity boosts, their retirement bonuses are quite weak as a whole for the admiral retirement bonuses, in my opinion. So I don't think very much of this card whatsoever. If you're going to be having naval stuff, you probably have harbor districts. Harbor districts already have admiral points on them. You're probably going to get more than enough admirals, more admirals than you want already from harbor districts if you're doing something with that. Traveling merchants I actually like. I think the great merchant boosts are really strong in this game. One of them, for example, gives you a +1 economic policy slot, which is just amazing. So I like the idea of beginning to generate merchant points above and beyond what I can get from my commercial hubs and markets. So getting traveling merchants up can be quite useful. And I sometimes will actually sub out my science cards to put in merchant times when I have this available. All right, guys, that concludes the review of this era's cards. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it was useful and informative. If you did, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Follow me, subscribe here to me on YouTube, and come follow me on Twitch. And hopefully you'll check out the rest of my content. So thanks for watching, guys. FilthyRobot out. I will see you guys soon.